Good morning. Good morning, Ruthie and Fran. Nancy. How's everybody today? I'm actually sitting in a chair this morning. This is a little different than what I normally do. Nice day for a walk out there. So, let's get started. I wanted to talk to you about love or fear. Because it's not love and fear, it's one or the other. And I'll start out by giving you some conceptual definitions. I used to give a lecture where I taught that love is an emotion. And I also taught another lecture where I taught love is a state of being. And for most of us, love is an emotion, for many of us on this planet. And we all have different interpretations and variations of what love is. So for some, love is tough love. For some, it's the opposite would be, very, very giving and loving, using that word to define itself. For a lot of people, love is conditional. And what that means is if you get upset with someone, your love abates somewhat. That is humanistic love, as opposed to agape love or godly love. What I want to talk about today is love as a state of being. The same thing I'm talking about with love can almost be applied to fear. So, most people who are in the fields of psychology or psychiatry or counseling or any, what's the other one I'm trying to think of? Any field that studies philosophical interpretations. Love and fear are the only two emotions. And within those two emotions, there's lots of feelings. As a matter of fact, the ancient Essenes defined love and feeling very differently. In today's vernacular, not love and feeling, but emotions and feelings. In today's vernacular, emotions and feelings are the same. You look it up in the dictionary, and they both cross-reference and refer to each other. So an emotion is a strong feeling, and a feeling is an emotion. But back in the day, it was a very, very different thing, and that's the way I look at emotions and feelings. So conceptually, there's two things. One, that is the umbrella, and everything falls underneath. So love as a state of being, and fear as a state of being. This applies to today's world, but before we get into that, when we talk about love as an emotion, we're talking about something that's usually humanistic and is not at the highest level of what love could be. If you have Dr. David Hawkins' map of consciousness, you all have it, because I put it out on Facebook 2 or 3 Sundays ago, probably 3 Sundays ago. So it's on my Facebook page, and you can refer to that. When we have a situation in which we're in today, where a lot of people are doing things and they say they're doing it because they love this person, or they love their life and they want to stay alive, many of us are doing what we're doing out of fear, although we call it love. One thing I want to define, when a state of being of love versus a state of being of fear is not, if you're in a state of fear, it doesn't necessarily mean you feel the fear, okay? You may just always operate from a state of fear. Now, if what psychologists say is happening, that is 70% of the time, we're anxious and stressed, that does not come from love. It does not come from the state of love. Well, I'm stressed because I want my family to be healthy and safe, and because I love them so much. No, it's because you're fearful, period. Yeah, you may love them, but your modus operandi is based in fear, okay? And you have to understand where you're coming from so that you can then make course corrections if needed. I have always used the example, the husband who has 3 jobs because he loves his family so much. He doesn't want to lose the house. And, that's his explanation to his friends. I love my wife and my family, and I want to make sure I secure their future and so on, and give them a good life now. That's not love-based. That's fear-based. And you could argue that with me, but I could argue back. So when we're in a situation as we are today out in the world, and we are fearful, and if you're watching the news at all, I don't care if it's once a week, if you're watching the news, it's all fear-based. All news is fear-based. So you're going to be introducing that into your field. Every time you read a newspaper, listen to the radio, watch the news, I don't care if it's today or if it was 2 years ago, it's always negative. ABC News, World News Tonight, has one story at the end of every program. That's a minute or less. That's an uplifting story. That's the only good piece of information on that in that 30 minutes. But we all are riveted, if we're news watchers, to the TV for those 30 minutes, those 29 minutes, wanting to see what's going on in the world so we can stay informed, and otherwise you're burying your head in the sand. You'd be better off burying your head in the sand. So, I'm going to read something to you. This is from a book called A Course in Miracles. Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted, producing inevitable strain. This can be corrected only by accepting a unified goal. So that is where you don't have duplicitous thoughts. One's going this way and one's going this way. Or your thought and your feeling are harmonious and are not disharmonious. If it's disharmonious, you're coming from a point of fear, okay? You're not in the state of love. If you hope to spare yourself from fear, there are some things you really need to realize. The mind is very powerful and never loses its creative force. It never sleeps, and every single instant it is creating. What does that mean? If you live a life where you're 70% of the time you're freaked out, whether it's this much or it's this much, you're in a state of fear and you're living under the hormones of stress. You go to sleep at night, guess what happens? If you're that person I just described and you're living under the hormones of stress, 70% of your waking day, you go to sleep at night, you just are programming, you've already programmed during the day, your subconscious mind. So at nighttime, the only thing that's awake is the subconscious mind, and you are reinforcing the subconscious mind. So when you wake up the next day, what are you going to do? You're going to come back to consciousness. You're going to start to feel what you feel and what's going on. You're going to remember who you are. Oh yeah, yesterday I was fearful. I got to be fearful again. And you don't think those words exactly, but you do that every single morning when you reacclimate yourself to who you are, quote unquote. Not the brightest thing that we do. We need to stop that. We need to cancel. We need to change it, and we need to replace it with thoughts that are different and feelings that are different. So, I read before, only your mind can produce fear. But it's not the same case with love. Love is God. We've heard this expression, God is love. God created love. So love is not only created by your mind, it is created by Source. It is created by the Creator. It is created by God. So love is both inside you and all around you. Fear exists only in your head. Now, we happen to produce such power with our thoughts that we send those fear waves out. And when we do that, that affects the immediate people we're around. They feel it. And it affects everybody else. It's like an atomic bomb from your atoms to theirs. Okay? So if that's what you want to send out because you think, oh, I'm being smart, I'm being protective, I'm helping out my family and my friends, I would ask that you rethink that. We need to get on the page of, for lots of reasons, you've heard me say them over the months, and we need to get on the page of being harmonious in our own thoughts so that we ourselves are in a state that's uplifting, that connects us with the divine, and get out of the state of mind that we tend to be in, our default mode mechanism. What do we normally think? Do we normally think these fearful thoughts? Well, if science is correct, 70% of the time, all of us are doing this. Most of us are doing this. So we got to jump up. How do we do that? We do that in a number of different ways. One of the things I teach you is meditation. So why meditation? It works. It works really well once you realize you can do it. If you're still stuck at the point of, man, this is tough, I can't do it, this is not for me, I would say keep working at it. I have gone personally in my life, since I started meditating at the age of 16, I have gone months of not being able to get into a meditation, and yet still sit down every single morning, because I've experienced the highs. When I am in a state, after having meditated for months, people notice the difference, and that's how I have noticed some of the biggest changes in my life. People come back to me and say, you're different. Or people would want to hang around me because the energy around this physical frame changes. You become clearer in your thoughts, in your thinking. You become more peaceful. You become more calm. You don't lose your sense of humor and your desire to go out and play and be a goof. It's actually enhanced, okay? So, but meditation's one of only many different methods, okay? If you're religious, you may call it prayer. If you're not into either of those, you might do tapping. If anybody knows what I'm doing here, this is called tapping, okay? And you're hitting certain acupuncture or acupressure points in the body that activate, and literally, and that works, okay? That's a method some people employ. There's rapid eye movement, and I'm not talking about sleep, okay? There's all different types of techniques. Meditation is one of the few that totally you go inside and there's no props. It's all you. Now, is it the angel you, or is it the devil you? Is it the higher self you, or is it the ego you? Okay? You want to align with the ego you. So your choice is always between love or fear. Where are you coming from? Where are you situated? Love is associated or aligned with vision, illumination, joy, ecstasy, beauty, truth, peace, enlightenment, ineffableness, revelation, transcendence, acceptance, openness, willingness. Fear is associated with fear itself, pride, anger, hatred, frustration, grief, guilt, apathy, shame, despair, humiliation, disembodiment. So recognizing some signs and where you are on the scale is a first helpful step. Doing something about it is another step, okay? I'm going to read something else to you that I really enjoy from A Course in Miracles that just kind of sums up a lot of things that I believe and I teach. When I'm going to tell you this, if you listen to the news, you're having a wave of energy come at you that is based in fear. You have to know this at this point. If you don't, I don't know why you don't. It's what the news does, and they know. We know this now as lay people because there's been so many articles about this. If you're going to allow yourself to be introduced to that, you need to do something to counter that. So whatever your practice is, you need to get into that heavily, because once you get a dose of it, you got to not only get that out, you got to replace it. Okay? And I have not watched the news or read the paper on a regular basis, except that when I'm at friends' house, they have a newspaper. But I stopped subscribing, I stopped watching the news on a regular basis probably 20, 25 years ago, and I know as much as everybody else out there. And the stuff I don't know, as I listen to other people converse or they try to engage me in a conversation, they're angry when they're telling me the story. They're talking to me about something that upsets them. And there are people I know who love watching the news because they love the feeling they get when they're angry. They love being justified in their anger against what they just heard on the news. And I call this righteous indignation. And there's no righteousness about any of it. It's really kind of ignorant. Usually if I'm not live, I call it stupid, but I won't call it stupid today. Okay? So I'm going to read this other thing to you. Then we're going to close our eyes and do some meditation. Perfect love casts out fear. If fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love exists. If there is fear, it produces a state that does not exist. If I were you, I'd go to this spot in the video after this is done and write that down. It's words of wisdom. The only thing that exists is love. If you're fearful, you just produced a state that does not exist. Well, what the hell are you talking about? Most of all of us are afraid. So what do you mean it's not real? Fear exists only and is produced only in your mind God did not produce fear. You did. Rather, your ego did. Therefore, it's not real. It's an illusion. It's part of the dream. Did you get that? These are words to live by. Yeah, they're uplifting. They're beautiful. So, let me lead you through. Close your eyes. Get yourself comfortable. I'm going to give you a minute or two, and I'll talk a little bit during this time, but give you a minute or two to do your ritual of getting situated physically, acclimating yourself and your posture, getting your breathing in sync to where you want it to be. Breathing through the nose, because when you breathe through the nose, you activate the relaxation response. Sit up tall. And as some of you may know, in the book of John, there is no fear in love. They are at the opposite end of the spectrum. So start to feel a loving feeling. Start to feel the emotion of love. How do you do that? Again, bring to mind something that lifts your spirits. Keep breathing through your nose, that slow, smooth, deep breath. That quote that there is no fear in love also means there is no love in fear. Create a life right now, in these next few minutes, in which you are creating a life of love. The highest truth, where peace, beauty, enlightenment, bliss, ineffableness, serenity, ecstasy, reverence, willingness, where they all exist. Because you are that very thing. You are that very thought. The scripture, the kingdom of God is within you, does not require the word within. The kingdom of God is you. Bathe in that knowledge. Feel what that feels like. Touch your higher self. And if you want to increase the power of what you feel, you send it out to another. you send it out to a group of people. You sit there in your meditation and you beam uplifting energy, love, beauty to others, whether you know them or not. And the more you give, the more you receive. The more you open your heart, the more you're able to receive and give even more. Touch someone etherically right now. Bring yourself to that point of upliftment so that someone else can feel the same thing. Feel the joy spread within and around you. And if you're feeling tingles, or the hairs raise on your arms, or the back of your neck, that is the energy that you are producing within that you can send. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Create your life, create your field, opening to the possibility that you can, in fact, do what you are doing, and you can do it on demand. Surrender the ego by letting it go so that you open up the divine that is already within you, that spark that becomes a burning flame that touches others from 10 feet. That influences and uplifts. Breathe in love and breathe out the same. Let your breath become the carrier for both yourself and others, so that you can build upon what you're creating right now. This feeling, this spirit, this state of being never leaves. It is always there waiting for you to tap into it. For many of us, forgiveness is also a vehicle to open our hearts. Forgive yourself. Forgive others. And by forgiving others, you forgive yourself, because we are all one. We all come from the same spirit. We have different physical bodies, so we think. May the rest of your day be blessed, as it is now, as it is always. Throughout your day, open your heart, take a moment. Even if you have to get in your car to get away, go somewhere and park, take a moment. Close your eyes every now and again and take a moment. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.